Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The Information Commissioner has fined the LeaveEU campaign and Arron Banks' Eldon Insurance a total of £120,000 for serious breaches of electronic marketing laws. Both firms will be audited to determine how they're using customer information after the ICO found they had shared mailing lists without consent. Separately, Mr Banks is being investigated by the National Crime Agency and the Financial Conduct Authority. He has denied any wrongdoing. The ICO initially announced in November that they intended to fine the two organisations for data breaches. They found that LeaveEU used Eldon Insurance customers' details unlawfully in order to send almost 300,000 political marketing messages. LeaveEU has been fined £15,000 for this breach. The Commissioner also found that Eldon Insurance carried out two unlawful direct marketing campaigns in which more than 1 million emails were sent to LeaveEU subscribers without sufficient consent. LeaveEU has been fined £45,000, which is £15,000 less than the ICO initially proposed, while Eldon Insurance has been fined £60,000. Well, our political correspondent Michael Crick joins us now. Michael.
Yes, well, two things to stress here. First, LeaveEU were not the official designated pro-Brexit campaign during the referendum. They were a secondary, although very wealthy, campaign associated with Nigel Farage and Arron Banks. Second, it's only the first of these offences for which LeaveEU was fined £15,000, which occurred before the referendum. The second one, for which collectively LeaveEU and Eldon were fined more than £100,000, was in the period after the referendum, which shows, of course, that Mr Banks and his friends have been still campaigning on the issue. And indeed, last night at a dinner in Ballymena in Northern Ireland, involving the Democratic Unionists, the government's sometimes friends on Brexit, one of the guests was Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Conservative backbench Brexiteer, and also today, according to a tweet by LeaveEU figure Andy Wigmore, also at the dinner was Arron Banks. Now, today the ICO warned that any attempt to destroy documents and evidence would be a serious criminal offence, and they said that they will be going to the offices of LeaveEU and Eldon to assess staff and documentation. LeaveEU themselves said that they were disappointed but not surprised by these decisions. They say they'll be appealing against them in the courts, and they say that the decisions were politically motivated. Channel 4 News contacted Andy Wigmore to ask if he would be cooperating with the investigation. He gave a simple three-word reply: should be fun.
Michael Crick.
Let's return to the news that the Information Commissioner's Office has fined the LeaveEU campaign and Brexit backer Arron Banks' Eldon Insurance a total of £120,000 for serious breaches of electronic marketing laws related to the EU referendum. Here to tell us more is the BBC's Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford. What's happened, Daniel?
Well, after this quite long-running investigation by the Information Commissioner's Office, they'd warned in November that they would be issuing fines. There's been a negotiation since then about the level of the fines. They have confirmed this morning that they are fining LeaveEU £60,000 and Eldon Insurance, which of course is owned by Arron Banks, £60,000. So a total of £120,000 worth of fines issued by the Information Commissioner's Office, and that is essentially because the data of the Eldon Insurance customers and the LeaveEU subscribers was being misused, and to a degree there was an overlapping of those two sets of data. So the Information Commissioner this morning saying it's deeply concerning that sensitive personal data garnered for political purposes was later used for insurance purposes, and vice versa. It should never have happened. And the two sets of fines were £15,000 to LeaveEU for using Eldon Insurance's database to send out political messaging, and then £45,000 to LeaveEU and £60,000 to Eldon Insurance for sending out 1 million emails to LeaveEU subscribers without sufficient consent.
And what happens now? Obviously, she's given her statement. We haven't yet heard from Arron Banks himself, but what happens now?
Well, LeaveEU have in the past described her as biased and it as being a kangaroo quango, but we haven't heard officially from them this morning. The fine is now set, so they'll have to pay the two £60,000 fines. But also, as part of this, the Information Commissioner's Office will now be allowed to conduct an audit of the joint offices of Eldon Insurance and LeaveEU. They'll be allowed to go in there, see what the data protection practices are going on there, to interview staff. So there's more pain to come for both Eldon Insurance and LeaveEU about how it was that they were dealing with people's personal data during the EU referendum campaign.
Daniel Sanford, thank you. Claire, what does this do in terms of people's views of the conduct of the referendum campaign on the Leave side?
Well, actually, I don't think it does anything unless you're already of the view that this was an illegitimate vote and you don't support it. So I just had a quick look on social media and everyone's saying, we knew it was corrupt, people would never have voted Leave. Let me assure you, people didn't vote Leave because of a bit of dodgy dealing on data by Arron Banks. It doesn't mean I think it's a good thing. I don't want my data misused like that. But mixing up databases in that way has been done by people all over the place. I think it's unfortunate, but saying that Arron Banks is dodgy is very different than then saying that delegitimises the vote to leave the EU. And that's the way it'll be used, but that's just politicking and weaponising the situation.
Louise, is there a distinction?
No, not really. I mean, I think the problem is that he's dodgy, and therefore, yet again, it's yet another blow in our political life, really, that everywhere you look, it feels like you can't trust anything that anybody says, and that's what comes out of it. The detail of, you know, and saying that the Information Commissioner's Office is a kangaroo court is just a complete nonsense. I mean, you know, it just doesn't help that, you know, Arron Banks and his like, UKIP funder, etc., just keeps ebbing away at the trust any of us have in anything that's political.
Now, of course, we don't know at this point in time that he has done anything wrong himself per se. Yes, obviously, he has been done in terms of breaches of campaign rules. But just broadly, picking up on Louise's point, what does it do to sort of trust in the system, in election campaigns, where quite often people are fined, of course, for various misdemeanours, including overspending?
Arron Banks, what a shock. Seemed like such a nice man. Look, firstly, I'm of the view that if you are canvassing, if you're gathering data for the purpose of a political campaign and you then use that to sell insurance or anything, I'm not clear why that's not a criminal offence. I feel like it should be. More importantly, the big lesson, what happened during that referendum, is that you had non-traditional political campaigners, people who hadn't been really involved in political campaigns before, who felt they could do it better, who came in many respects, did do it better, but ran completely roughshod over the rules that we had put in place. And since then, I mean, you can argue about whether it delegitimises the vote or not, but we're still scrabbling and struggling to figure out how we pick up the pieces of that, what it means if you basically cheat in a campaign. Does that delegitimise the campaign? If not, what do you do to put that right, if anything,
all right,
and to discourage it happening again?
Well, we have now got a statement from Arron Banks in which he says, in response to these fines from the Information Commissioner, disappointed but not surprised in the ICO statement this morning, which we will be appealing through the courts. It is a politically motivated attack against our involvement in Brexit. We note the ICO have already been involved in a court action against us, backing the Fair Vote campaign, a second referendum group which lost its case. Sour grapes, James.
I mean, if I was totally honest, I find Arron Banks and most of his sort of like, you know, sort of the reptiles around that group kind of irritating, like most of the public. I kind of hope nature takes its course, or the law courts in some respects, and they can sort of leave the public sort of sphere. I broadly agree with what Hugo said. I mean, I think there has to be, we're long overdue updating some of our sort of electoral practices to see whether or not the use of data does have an effect, and whether there should be much more stringent regulations in place here. I mean, I actually think the bit that we're slightly glossing over is the fact that this is a private company using people who've given their data over for very good reasons to take part in the
that was at the heart, I think, of the Information Commissioner's report.
But I think we shouldn't distract from that by the Brexit issue, because I actually do think this happened quite more than we probably actually are aware of. I think this is a case that's been plucked out and is getting more attention than it normally would, but I'd be actually more interested to see how more prevalent this is in our economy. So I think that's actually a risk.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that calling people reptiles is helpful, personally, but I think that
I could have used worse words.
No, but
but thankfully you didn't. But yeah,
but no, but I think that actually Hugo's hit a very important point here, which is non-traditional campaigners got involved in this, and some of them might have been, you know, business types that you wouldn't normally have associated with politics. In many instances, it was on-the-ground campaigners who didn't know all the rules, and in that way, that's why Brexit has been both. Well, it's kind of exciting because it threw the rule book up in the air. But it doesn't. I'm not trying to suggest that the rules aren't important. I'm saying that's, I think, what happened. People didn't know what all the rules were.
People didn't know, but yeah, when you have people like this campaign, I mean, these are wealthy, powerful people. Yeah. What this shows that if you control huge amounts of data, if you control a huge company, a huge marketing company, an insurance company, these are some of the most powerful people in our society. And if we're just handing over the ability to campaign to them in a way that outweighs the campaigning that can be done by traditional political campaigners, that's negative in every way.
I was agreeing with you.
But there will be people, Claire, who will say that the campaign was run also being on the sort of behalf of the people. It was supposed to be a sort of demotic campaign. Is he representing that side?
So the truth is, I don't think that the Brexit vote was won because of LeaveEU, Arron Banks or even Nigel Farage. I don't mean they had no relationship at all, but that is an overstatement, misunderstands what's happened. I was agreeing with you to just say that things have changed and been thrown up in the air. It doesn't mean that I don't think that there should be rules. I just think that there was a kind of nice way of doing things that got thrown away during this election.
But it's not just the campaign. It's not just the campaign. Let's just quickly show this tweet from Andy Wigmore, who works very closely with Arron Banks. He said, good to catch up with at Jacob Rees-Mogg in Ballymena, with DUP online and at East Antrim MP. Andy and Paisley talking Brexit, Irish border backstop and WTO at Arron Banks at LeaveEU officials. So they're still very much involved with what's going on.
Yes, I know, but he's got an opinion on Brexit. I'm not trying to deny that. I'm just saying I don't think it was him that won it, or this particular breach was what convinced millions and millions of people. I agree, by the way, that one of the things that I'd be most annoyed about is not the politics, but it's like, right, I almost could say, use the data to push a political message, but when you use my political message to then start trying to sell me insurance, I'd be annoyed. But let's be honest, that's considered to be legitimate practice when it's done on Facebook or when it's done on anything else. Anything you buy, you suddenly think, oh my God, I'm being marketed and targeted for a million other things. One of the things that annoys me is the assumption they know what I think.